we just didn't have sweet corn. In fact, some of the recipes I found for corn, for instance, it says use green corn, and I'm assuming that means green field corn. That was, and if you take it at the right time, you have to go out in the field every hour almost and catch it at the right stage, and you can use it. It's not very sweet, but it is very tender, so I guess you could use this green corn. But of course, the Pomeranians didn't know anything about corn, and in fact, a house guest from Germany, a Pomeranian, refused to eat corn at our house in 1978 because he said corn was for pigs. And of course, this has to do with the war too, because a lot of those people had to end up eating food for pigs. Anyway, I kind of accumulated a bunch of books, and for those of you who knew my father, Norman Boehlke, he was kind of a book collector, and he was always interested in things that discussed areas of his interest. So I have a bunch of books of his, and I have some of my own. There are 3 really old books here, and I have to ask you to be very, very careful with them, because they, unfortunately, for you historians, you know about acid paper. This is acid paper, and it's just going to dissolve away. These pages are so crispy that if you don't handle them right, they just crumble already. This book is, for those of you who are long time know Milwaukee, this is called The Practical Cookbook for German Americans, and it was published by George Brumder here in Milwaukee. So, interestingly, this book is an American book, and it's in German print script.
You said George who?
George Brumder.
Oh,
George
from the Brumder building?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Brumder. You know, that building's called Germania. He was
Yes, now it is, yeah.
that was the whole thing. He was a German American, and he was very proud of that. He published a lot of the German books in Milwaukee in that time. Unfortunately, the front page is missing. Good reason to have the front page. Keep it, because I don't know what the date is, and that's unfortunate, because it's very important with this food to find out exactly when something was published. Interestingly, this book already has recipes for tomatoes in it. Now, tomatoes is a funny vegetable for us, because we're all very familiar with tomatoes, right? And we probably eat them quite a bit. There was a time, you know, in Europe that tomatoes were called the love fruit, and somehow somebody decided they were an aphrodisiac, and they also thought that some people thought that tomatoes were poisonous. And I actually was listening to a talk show where somebody was talking about tomatoes, and some farmer lady called up and said, "What were you saying about tomatoes? Are they poisonous?" There's somebody still believes that they might be poisonous, but they appeared in this book already in a German-American cookbook. So we latched on to a lot of food rather quickly here in America. And there's text in all kinds of different books I have. Here's an old Farmer's Almanac cookbook, and in the front of the book there was an interesting paragraph in there that I thought would be appropriate. Now, this is colonial, so we're talking about New England and in the 1700s, and they're English people, so it's a little different, but they were all immigrants. And it says here that the settlers who landed on the New World shores were raised on food of old England, the mother country, and of course brought these tastes with them. The English diet, and of course most other Northern European people from similar climates, featured roast meats, birds, pies, and pottage, gravies and sauces, boiled suety puddings, fish, cabbage, turnips, carrots, onions, parsnip, peas, rutabagas, or Swedish turnips, cheeses and other dairy products, apples, peaches in milder areas, cherries, currants, gooseberries, pears, greengage and damson plums, quinces, breads, and ale or beer. Although the immigrant ships carried seeds or cuttings of their English fruits and vegetables, the agricultural grains such as wheat, oats, rye, barley, the early harvests were often a disaster, and the colonists turned to the native Indians for help and tutelage in utilizing plants and animals native to America. I guess if you're starving, you will eat anything. And that actually is what caused us to adopt these new foods rather quickly. If you never needed them, you probably would, we don't need that tomatoes, we'll just leave it go. So just think what we got from the Indians: corn, native beans. You think of, I actually think of Germany as having, almost every garden has pole beans in it, but that's not a native plant for them. That was something they picked up from us. Squash, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. A lot of what we consider normal cuisine for us now is American. Chocolate included. Chocolate. So anyway, these new shipments from England in time reinforced supplies of seeds, farm and draft animals, and tools. But meanwhile, the settlers eagerly adopted the fruits, nuts, vegetables, fish, and flesh so plentiful in their new home. So from the onset, colonial cooking impressed the stamp of the New World on its English and European inheritance. So it was combined rather quickly, and I find that very interesting. But I also found a reference here to, according to the Rural and Domestic Life of Germany by William Howitt, published in 1842. This is the thing, is trying to find references to what a meal or what a day would be like in the 1800s, and there isn't much out there. It's kind of interesting. Breakfast was simply coffee and bread with or without butter. Coffee was drunk black, no sugar, cream, or milk. Lunch, or dinner. Lunch was the main meal of the day and was served around noon or 1 o'clock. The German cookery abounds with soups, vegetables, and sausages of various kinds, sauerkraut, of course, salads of many kinds, amongst which a particular salad made of cold potatoes and vinegar and anchovies was a great favorite. Does that sound like German potato salad? This is from that Rural and Domestic Life of Germany. For supper, the last meal of the day was eaten around 7 and consisted of cold meats, potato salad, and such like. Meats included beef, veal, mutton, which was said by Howitt to be a poor quality, the mutton. The main meat was pork, either fresh or cured. Game was also popular: hares, rabbits, boar, and venison. Herring was popular near the sea, and freshwater fish such as trout and pike were caught for eating. I found something that was very interesting. Do you know that now we're talking way back in medieval or even earlier times, the common people hardly had any meat. Before they started farming animals, they didn't have much meat, and they ate mostly vegetables, and it sounds like weeds. What they found around their dooryard, and the royalty is the ones who had meat, and that was because they hunted. You could be hung for poaching on the royal estates, and so the poor people had no meat. The royals had meat, and the interesting thing is that the common people started domesticating animals, and then they had meat, and the royalty started eating this domestic meat because of the common people. So that was an interesting find, that the poor people are actually developed the meats that we use today. So the next thing that comes to my mind is that, let's see, do we finish this?